Today, after claiming to support bump stock bans in years past, shame on them. Republicans should explain to parents and teachers and students why they'd rather make it easier for murderers to access dangerous weapons instead of making it harder. It's not enough for Republicans to roll their eyes and dismiss this bump stock vote as a show vote. Tell that to the families who lost loved ones. I urge Republicans not to object. Americans are sick of gun violence. They're especially sick of lawmakers who obey the gun lobby and kill any effort to make our communities safer. And I want to thank my friend and a great leader in the Senate, Martin Heinrich, on this and so many other issues, whether it's conservation or environment or protecting the rights of people or just helping New Mexico in every way as he's now valiantly helping them with the fires that are ravaging in his state. The senator from New Mexico is one of our great leaders here, and I'm so proud to yield to him to make the unanimous consent request.
Senator from New Mexico.
Guys, if you were just
Mr. President,
this is
I want
right
to
here.
begin today before we get to bump stocks by acknowledging the South Fork and Salt fires that have forced literally thousands from their homes in Lincoln County, New Mexico, and the Mescalero Apache Nation over the last 24 hours. I was actually just at the White House discussing these fires with Homeland Security Advisor Liz Sherwood Randall. And these
All right, turn the audio down for a second, guys, just to tell you what's happening. Right now, he's talking about the fires. I can do this as an opening. They're calling for unanimous consent. You need one rejection or one obstruction from a Republican. One. That's all you're looking for.
And my thoughts are with every single one of you. I want to extend my extraordinary thanks to the wildland firefighters, the first responders, local and tribal leaders who are working right now to protect New Mexicans. And I'm also grateful to all of the surrounding communities that have already welcomed thousands of their neighbors.
So again,
In times of need, New Mexicans look out for each other.
what you're going to be looking for
And I
here,
know that
guys,
we will
is
do
one
everything
Republican to stand up and object
help
when they call for
fellow
unanimous
Mexicans
consent.
through
That's
this
what you're
immediate
chasing. And
emergency.
then the fireworks start because the Democrats are going to get up and start doing all their rhetoric. This is where it gets
in the impacted area to please
politicky.
heed evacuation orders.
So
and follow
while he's talking about the
directions
fire,
from
that's not
local
important.
authorities.
That's what we're looking for
Please
here.
do everything
So
you
he's going to say
can
Go
to stay
Safe Act. He's going to say the Bump Act.
Now, Mr. President,
Here we go.
I'm also here today to make a UC request for the Senate to consider my legislation.
Unanimous
The
consent.
Banning Unlawful Machine Gun Parts, or BUMP Act. Nearly 7 years ago, on October the 1st of 2017, more than 20,000 people gathered for a large outdoor music festival. It was the third day in a row that folks from all around the country joined their friends and family to hear music from some of their favorite musicians. And no one could have anticipated the nightmare that was about to unfold that day.
Subtle sign.
Just after 10 o'clock at night, thousands were listening to the final performance of the night. And then over the music, they started to hear what at first people thought were fireworks. Rapid gunfire rained down on the crowd with shots so close together that they seemed to almost bleed into each other. Complete panic erupted. And for the next terrifying 10 minutes, concert goers ran in every direction, searching for cover where there was none. Some falling down next to bleeding friends and dying loved ones. Others fleeing desperately, trying to reach safety. In total, the shooter fired more than 1,000 rounds of ammunition in just 10 minutes. He killed 58 people that night, injured hundreds more, including 2 more who would ultimately perish from their wounds. It was and is the deadliest mass shooting in American history. The Las Vegas gunman was able to murder and injure so many people so quickly because he used a deadly device known as a bump stock. Bump stocks are an attachment that modifies semi-automatic firearms to dramatically increase their rate of fire, allowing them to operate as fully automatic weapons. They make it possible to shoot hundreds of rounds a minute. And let me be real clear, as a firearms owner myself, there's no legitimate use for a bump stock. Not for self-defense, not in a law enforcement context, not even in military applications, as they're less accurate than a standard fully automatic military platform. But what they are tailor-made for is a mass shooting. Now, I know there are people who will say guns don't kill people, people kill people. But the reality is this: bump stocks kill and injure in the hundreds. As someone who has owned and used firearms for most of my life, for hunting, for sport, for self-defense, I know for a fact that bump stocks serve no legitimate purpose. And that's why in the days and weeks that followed the horrific mass shooting in Las Vegas, Nevada, I led a bipartisan effort to ban bump stocks. I introduced legislation in the Senate alongside my Republican colleague and friend Jeff Flake of Arizona and Nevada's Senator Catherine Cortez Masto. We also called on then President Trump to use his authority to ban bump stocks in a federal rule. Now, President Trump actually agreed with us at the time and finalized an ATF rule to get that done. But last week, our wildly out-of-touch Supreme Court majority invalidated that rule. In an illogical and deadly ruling, they made bump stocks legal once again. Now, as Justice Sotomayor said in her dissent, when I see a bird that walks like a duck, swims like a duck, quacks like a duck, I call that bird a duck.
Yeah, that's not what she said.
I agree with Justice Sotomayor.
She also
A
said
bump
common use,
stock
baby.
equipped semi-automatic rifle is a machine gun. And it should be banned just like machine guns have been banned for nearly 100 years.
They haven't been banned.
Now, even still, within the Supreme Court's majority's ruling, they gave Congress, they gave us clear direction on the only way for us to protect Americans from these deadly devices.
Here comes the play.
Congress needs to act.
Here comes the trap.
We
right
need
there.
to pass my bill to ban bump stocks and do it now.
Ooh.
And I am proud to lead the Banning Unlawful Machine Gun Parts,
subtlety.
or BUMP Act, alongside senators like Catherine Cortez Masto, Susan Collins, Angus King, and the more than 20 new co-sponsors who joined our legislation after the Supreme Court's recent ruling.
Out of 100.
This is the same bipartisan bill that I first introduced in 2018 in the aftermath of that shooting. The BUMP Act would prohibit the sale of bump stocks and other devices that allow semi-automatic firearms to increase their rate of fire and operate as fully automatic weapons. This is something that nearly all Americans agree should be done. This should be a common sense, bipartisan public safety vote that all of us should welcome if we believe that our kids should have the freedom to feel safe in their church or their classroom or their movie theater. We should also be clear about what happens if we don't pass this legislation. We will be giving a free pass to street gangs and cartels and mass shooters to access these deadly devices
Cartels.
and turn them against our communities.
Because they don't have full autos.
That's the harm that we're putting our communities in. There's some skepticism out there about whether Congress can get this done, about whether all of us coming together to ban bump stocks is impossible. But 2 years ago, we proved that type of thinking is flat wrong.
Oh, Safer Communities
Over my
Act.
time here in the Senate,
Here
I
we
have
go.
learned that people are always quick to tell you there's no path forward for your legislation. And the reality is that there is never a path forward until we collectively choose to make one. I was proud to be part of the core group of bipartisan negotiators here in the Senate that helped pass the Bipartisan Safer Communities Act. That was the first significant federal gun safety legislation signed into law in nearly 3 decades. And during those negotiations, I worked especially close with my colleague, Senator Collins, on a successful effort to increase criminal penalties for those who would put guns into the hands of criminals and to make it illegal to traffic firearms out of our country. And by passing that law, we proved that Congress can take concrete action to protect our communities from gun violence. Now, Mr. President, Now it's time that we take similar bipartisan action to ban these bump stocks. And for my part, I refuse to stand idly by and wait for the next mass shooting. So I would ask all of my colleagues to please support the Bump Act, to ban these deadly mass killing devices once and for all. Mr. President, I ask unanimous consent that the Committee on the Judiciary be discharged from further consideration of S-1909, the Banning Unlawful Machine Gun Parts Act, and the Senate proceed to its immediate consideration. Further, that the bill be considered read a third time and passed, and that the motion to reconsider be considered made and laid upon the table.
All right.
Is there
waiting
objection?
for the Republican?
Mr. President, reserving the right to object.
Boom!
Senator from Nebraska.
Welcome to another day in the
wait.
Democrats' summer of show votes.
Now wait for the Democrats to flip their brains. Watch this.
The Supreme Court made a decision last week that he didn't like. A 6-3 majority of the Supreme Court ruled the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives overstepped their authority when they tried to reclassify bump stocks as machine guns. The Supreme Court made the right decision. In January, I joined Senator Lummis and other colleagues in filing an amicus brief urging the Supreme Court to do what they did.
Oh, snap.
But the majority leader and his Democrat colleagues supported the gun-grabbing overreach. So the majority leader has decided to bring up a bill called the Bump Act. He claims this bill will ban bump stocks. But just like his previously misnamed bills, if you actually read the bill, that's not what it does at all.
Get him.
The Bump Act targets common firearm accessories, not just bump stocks.
Facts.
This is from the text of the bill. The bill bans any manual, power-driven, or electronic device primarily designed or redesigned so that when the device is attached to a semi-automatic firearm, the device materially increases the rate of fire of the firearm. In short, this doesn't ban bump stocks. This bill would ban literally any item
There you go.
that makes a firearm easier and in some cases safer to shoot. We're talking about competition or adjustable triggers. We're also talking about items that reduce the distance between a shooter's hand and the trigger, like certain firearm stocks or grips. Again, it's not just about bump stocks. That's why disabled veterans hate this bill. I've heard about veterans in Nebraska who are concerned about this bill. Sometimes veterans who are disabled or elderly choose to adjust the stock or grip on a firearm to make it easier and safer to shoot. The Constitution protects their right to do so, that through the Second Amendment. This bill would take that constitutional right away from the same men and women who fought for our Constitution. The other problem with this bill is that it doesn't even define what it's trying to regulate. The bill uses the phrase rate of fire 5 separate times.
I said that this morning.
3 of those times, the bill said it would ban a device that materially increases the rate of fire of a firearm. Nowhere in the bill does it define what constitutes the rate of fire increase. The other 2 times, it says it would ban a device that approximates the action or rate of fire of a machine gun. But under federal law, it's not the rate of fire that makes something a machine gun. Under 26 U.S.C. 5845B, it's a mechanical function. So either this rate of fire section was written by someone who had no idea what they were talking about,
Shocking.
or it's a cynical attempt to include more firearm accessories than just bump stocks. I would bet the latter. And let's be honest, does anyone seriously believe this lawless Biden administration would interpret this law in a way that respects law-abiding gun owners? Not. On this and other issues, the Biden administration has repeatedly expanded previously interpretations of our laws in ways that go far beyond what even the Obama administration was comfortable with.
This is the Republican, by the way.
And they were no friends of the Second Amendment. We cannot allow unelected bureaucrats at the ATF to abuse their authority and interpret laws in ways Congress clearly never intended. So this bill may be called the Bump Act, but it's not really about bump stocks. This bill is about banning as many firearm accessories as possible and giving ATF broad authority to ban most semi-automatic firearms.
Johnny, that's funny.
It's an unconstitutional attack on law-abiding gun owners. Under this bill, owners of any semi-automatic firearm that has been modified to make it easier to fire would be forced to register their firearms alongside actual machine guns in the ATF's National Firearm Registration and Transfer Record database. And if they don't, they'd be in violation of the law. That's really, really scary. If this bill becomes law, it would give the Biden administration the authority to force confiscation of any common semi-automatic firearm that has been modified to make it easier to shoot. The majority leader knows this bill will not pass. It won't pass because enough people in this building still believe in the Constitution. And the Constitution affords Americans the right to own a firearm. This vague, overreaching bill directly infringes upon that right. For safety, we ought to better enforce existing gun laws and address mental health issues. This bill doesn't do that. In fact, it doesn't do anything to address the root causes of gun violence. We're not addressing the mental health or cultural issues driving men and women to commit these horrible crimes, the failed family structures, the oppression, the division and glorification of violence on social media. If Democrats really cared about gun violence, they'd be trying to build support for a bill that can actually pass. Instead, we have a show vote on a bill that uses vague language to ban as many firearms accessories as possible and limit the Second Amendment rights of disabled and elderly Americans who may need certain accessories to use a firearm safely. We should be working on things that actually keep Americans safe, like the National Defense Authorization Act.
Kind of a weird
For these reasons, Mr. President, therefore, I object.
All right, so that's an
Objection is
objection.
heard.
Big deal. Here we go. Here's the response.
Mr. President,
Senator from New Mexico.
I just want to remind our colleagues that we actually did pass legislation 2 years ago to invest in mental health. And we passed a meaningful gun safety piece of legislation. But the assertion that this would ban some enormous number of firearm devices is certainly not rooted in fact. It would, however, ban bump stocks. And it would ban things like block switches, which also let semi-automatic firearms act as fully automatic firearms. Mr. President, I think the American people understand what common sense gun safety looks like. And that's what the Bump Act is all about. I will
Well, you ain't getting it, Cupcake.
reserve the rest of my time, but this will not be the last time you hear about these devices on the floor of the Senate.
So there should be a response here right now. If there's not, that'll be highly unusual. But where we're at right now, well, hold on, mics are coming on.
Note the absence of quorum.
Clerk will call the roll.
Ms. Baldwin.
All right, so here, let me turn this real quick. So what they're doing really quickly is they're running a quorum to see who's voting and who's here and all that kind of stuff, right? So this was the big deal. The big deal here was, where'd my OBS go? Let me change this around a little bit. All right, I'll bring it back up in a second. So the big deal here was they just basically said, hey, we want to do a unanimous consent vote, which essentially means I want a simple majority to bring this out and pass this bill. That's what effectively that means, okay? It doesn't work if one person says, nah, that ain't for me. That's what you just saw. So you saw the Democrat, Chuck Schumer, introduce it, and then introduce Martin Heinrich, who's the guy who introduced the bill with the blue suit and talking about the fires, right? He's the senator from New Mexico. From there, the Republican goes, yeah, I'll object. And at that point, they can no longer bring this thing forward. Okay, so effectively what you just saw was you saw Chuck Schumer bring the trap. You saw the Republicans go, yeah, I see your trap and I just don't care. And now the Democrats are waiting to spring the trap. So I'm keeping the feed going because right now I would expect to see a much more full-throated response than what Martin Heinrich just did. Because if they don't, they just made a political blunder because there's nothing to aggressively pursue on the media front, okay? That is actually a bigger story than the Republicans rejecting it, so I'm going to keep it open for a second. I mean, honestly, guys, that's very unusual that they would do that. Let me move some stuff around real quick. So for them to go down that road and set this entire trap up and then not actually spring the trap, I mean, this is effectively like you put all your ducks out in the water for your decoys, and you're sitting there and you got your shotgun ready, and then you don't pull the trigger when the ducks come down. That's effectively what we're witnessing if they don't do it. So I'm going to see who they bring down in a second. There's no way they don't bring somebody down. If they genuinely don't bring somebody down, that is political malpractice. I mean, the entire point of Chuck Schumer bringing this to the floor was a political trap. And I still have my audio going, so if it flips back over, I will show you. They went to a quorum call. I find that extremely interesting. Heinrich did not offer any type of response other than "nanny nanny boo boo, you're a meanie pants," and that was very weak-throated as well. And then Schumer left. I mean, we're going to keep on going on this, but it was so fascinating to watch this as it's continuing to go because people are coming in, filtering out. But so actually, I'm jumping over here. Nathan Meyer says they knew in advance it was going to fail, betting the Rhino Graham said no earlier. They didn't have the rhinos. That is very true. They did not have Lindsey Graham, and I made a short about that because he openly said, we're not doing this. I'll object. So if someone finally came up and objected, right? There goes Chris Murphy. I think that was Chris Murphy that just walked out because he likes those dumb boat shoes. Things you notice when you study these people. Thank you, Mike, for that. I appreciate you. But right now, guys, we've still got activity on the floor. I'm going to keep it going just because I simply do not believe that they did not take that opportunity. There is no way they didn't. Because if they genuinely did not, I mean, political malpractice doesn't even cover it. I mean, flat out. That whole point was to make a political game show of the entire thing, and they didn't even do it. That is exceedingly rare. Well, thank you for calling, everybody. That's awesome. So as we keep... Schumer's the kind of guy who puts cheese on raw meat. That is true. So as we go through this, guys, I mean, like, literally, hang in here with me for a few more minutes because I don't want you to miss if they come up with something. But, I mean, genuinely, you've got Schumer just did that. Heinrich just introduced it. The guy from Nebraska, I can't remember his name. I didn't recognize him. Just said, no, we're not doing it. And he talked about accessibility for veterans, which is more of a pistol-braced argument than there is for the bump stocks. Very unusual. That was a very half-hearted attempt at passing. I mean, like, I'll definitely be watching everything that we're covering here because the media's... There's no way they don't make hay out of this politically. If they don't, then they just wasted our time. They wasted all the previous media interviews. They wasted everything. There's no way they don't do something here. Tony Robinson, here I am thinking Glock switches are already illegal. Very true. Very true. I'm flabbergasted that they have not put up a better response than that. Chris Murphy never misses an opportunity to do this. Well, now, so Bob, now this is an important piece. There's no question. It's dead. It's done. Like, they just objected to it. Unanimous consent was rejected. It cannot pass. It is dead. So that is so fascinating, and I'll wait for a couple more minutes just to make sure that they don't do this, but genuinely, they got their media attention that they were going to do something, and the media won't follow up. Okay, so Jim Morrison, that's an interesting perspective. They think, Jim Morrison thinks that the media didn't bite big enough for a splash, so there wasn't enough attention to waste their time. That's a potential valid thing. If that's true, excuse me, that's very bad for Democrats. All right, so if you guys are just now coming in, we've really witnessed something unusual. So Chuck Schumer did get up. He did call for a unanimous consent. He had Martin Heinrich introduced to bring forward the Bump Act, and then there was a rejection of the Bump Act, an objection to the actual unanimous consent, which kills it effectively, and then that stinks, and then Martin Heinrich left. So it's a very interesting occurrence that just happened. If this is truly it, I mean, like, wow, talk about getting kicked right in the head. Cyan Tiger, yes, it is completely dead. Chuck introduced a squib load. It is looking that way. It is looking that way. I mean, genuinely, Yeah, Wolf Walker said they would be back. Yeah, they'd be back in another bill. That's what he was saying. He's like, they keep those bills on freaking shelves. Wag the dog is the Democrats' playbook move. Yeah, it is. What I missed, 96 Harris, basically a request for a unanimous consent and then a pitch for it, a rejection by the Republican, and then nothing happened after that. I mean, there's no... I'm flabbergasted that if that is truly what they just did. Oh, I gotta text some people real quick. Because there's no way. No way. I've got some text out to some contacts, so we'll see. But like, hey, XX, I'm glad you could watch. 2,000 people on short notice. Really cool of you guys to show up. I appreciate it. As always, we won for now. It is looking that way. Again, the audio is still on. Like, it's still fully on. It's still running. I just didn't want you guys to look at an empty room. Hold on. What you gonna say?
Mr. President,
Senator from Nevada.
are we in a quorum call?
Yes.
Ask that the quorum be vitiated.
Without objection.
Thank you. Mr. President, I rise today to express my deep disappointment when I just heard, unfortunately, from my Senate colleague from Nebraska,
She wasn't there.
Senator Pete Ricketts, who blocked Senator Heinrichs and Senator Collins' legislation, common sense, that would save lives. And I'm talking about Senate Bill 1909, which is the banning of unlawful
Here we go.
machine gun parts, or what we are calling as the Bump Act.
See, I told you guys.
Now, it is shocking to me that my colleagues aren't willing to move forward on such an important issue. Bump stocks are deadly firearm accessories that turn semi-automatic guns into machine guns, which are illegal, allowing a shooter to fire multiple bullets per second. Now, my husband and I are gun owners.
Yeah, sure you are.
We don't need a bump stock. And I know any common sense gun owner doesn't have a bump stock.
See, they be
What do you
thinking.
need it for?
They be thinking we were sleeping.
They're dangerous. They're incredibly deadly devices that have no place on our streets.
All right, now
And
we're
I'll tell
back.
you what, I know firsthand the damage that bump stocks can do, because nearly 7 years ago, Mr. President, when I was a brand new senator, had just been elected in 2017, Las Vegas, my hometown experienced the deadliest mass shooting in American history because of bump stocks. On October 1, 2017, a gunman opened fire at the Route 91 Harvest Festival in my hometown of Las Vegas. He had outfitted his weapons with bump stocks, allowing him to spray over 1,000 bullets into the crowd of concertgoers. And when I say sprayed, he was in a hotel room, knocked out the window, and it wasn't just a spray of bullets, it was raining down bullets on concertgoers below. And it was intentional. In 10 minutes with that bump stock, he murdered 58 people. 867 total people were wounded. Half of those people, 411, were wounded by gunshots, including 2 who later died as a result of their injuries. Think about that. Almost 470 people hit by bullets in under 10 minutes. Now, I want you to imagine the terror all those families must have felt. Unfortunately, I don't have to imagine it because I experienced it. My niece was at that concert that night. And I know exactly where I was when I found out she was there. I know exactly where I was when I found out she was safe. And later on that evening, I went to the Family Reunification Center and sat with those families who were waiting to hear from the coroner who was in the back room whether their loved one was in that back room. Now, I am thankful that my niece was not hit by one of those bullets. but too many were either killed or hit by bullets or suffered emotional distress because of it. I will never forget that night. I will never forget those families. It's heartbreaking. You could see their hopelessness in the room at the number of deaths and injuries being reported on TV as it continued to grow, waiting to hear. And I have to explain this because too much happens here in Washington, D.C. that we just think, oh, this is a number or this happened in some other community. When I'm talking raining down bullets on concert goers, think about this. As I talked to the doctors afterwards in the emergency rooms, the people that were injured, because it rained down, it came down on their heads, it came down on their body parts, it came down in devastating locations for people who actually survived that event but were wounded. Our hospitals were overrun. Nevadans, including me, we stood in line at blood banks for hours because there was such a need for blood in the hospitals for so many who had been injured. And as I've said, I talked to the doctors treating these injuries, and they described to me the scene that night was like a battlefield, The blood everywhere, the blood on the floor, the people that picked up bodies and took them to emergency rooms. They weren't literally ambulances that were picking these people up. These were concert goers. These were people that grabbed people to save them, put them in their own vehicles, and took them to the closest hospital. That was what was happening that night because somebody had a bump stock. Because somebody thought it was okay to outfit their guns with bump stock so they can kill more people in rapid succession. Now, understanding this, because this happened October 2017, we had a new president at the time, President Trump was the president at the time. Former President Trump directed his administration to ban these bump stocks. And I tell you, President Trump came out to Las Vegas at that time.
And
He saw, he heard. He banned the devices because he said, and I quote, legal weapons into illegal machine guns. That's what these bump stocks do. They turn legal weapons into illegal machine guns.
She lost the page.
Now, I believe the Supreme Court was wrong to overturn the Trump administration bump stock ban. But now that it's been struck down, it's on Congress to pass legislation to keep our community safe from these deadly devices.
Problem is the ATF.
Now, the reason why we went through ATF, and the Trump administration asked ATF, because that was the quickest way that we could do it administratively.
And that's the
The
point.
quickest way that we could take action and keep people safe. Now, in the most recent decision, Justice Samuel Alito said it himself in his concurring opinion in this case. He said it's within Congress's power to make this right. And I quote, this is from his concurring opinion. The horrible shooting spree in Las Vegas in 2017 did not change the statutory text or its meaning. That event demonstrated that a semi-automatic rifle with a bump stock can have the same lethal effect as a machine gun. But an event that highlights the need to amend a law does not itself change the law's meaning. And Justice Alito went on to say there is a simple remedy for the disparate treatment of bump stocks and machine guns. Congress can amend the law, and perhaps would have done so if ATF had stuck with its earlier interpretation. Now that the situation is clear,
That was the problem.
Congress can act.
That was the problem.
So to my colleague from Nebraska, this is not a
ATF.
show vote.
It is a show.
If you were here when I was here back then, we were trying to move as quickly as possible to get something done to save lives. First administratively,
And you did it
couldn't
wrong.
do it according to the court now. I disagree with the court. This is a machine gun, but the court now has put it back really in our realm to do something about it. And I cannot imagine any one of my colleagues standing there saying they wouldn't want to do the right thing here to continue to save lives.
Moral grandstanding.
I don't think they want to turn a blind eye to what happened in Las Vegas. I don't think they want to turn a blind eye to the 411 people who were shot at the Route 91 Harvest Festival, the 60 who were murdered by gunfire, and the thousands of families throughout our country whose lives have been tragically upended because of bump stocks.
She can go as long as she wants, David.
If we can't do something as Congress and come together in a bipartisan issue that not just Nevadans, but people in this country understand then that is disappointing and irresponsible. And it's negligent. It's negligent. So to my Republican colleagues, if you want to do something about this, and you're not happy with the Bump Stock Act that Martin Heinrich just put forward, which I think addresses all of the issues, then let's figure out how we get this done. Because it is our role now to do it. And we shouldn't stop working to right this wrong. I will tell you, I'm going to keep pushing this bill to keep our community safe. I am going to continue to work with anyone who wants to eradicate bump stocks in this country once and for all. And with that, Mr. President, I yield the floor.
All right. So hold on a second. Someone else is stepping up. This is a Republican. This is Jim Thune. Okay.
Mr. President.
This is where it's at.
How are you with? Mr. President, just a few minutes. I'll ask for unanimous consent to pass my Born Alive Abortion Survivors Protection Act.
Okay.
This is a very simple bill, Mr. President, and it should be a non-controversial one. It simply says
All
that
right.
baby born alive after an attempt.
So effectively, let me get everything back in here because that's not the channel we're here for. All right, so it's effectively completely dead. If you are just now coming in on the back end, let me recap this for you. So what you just saw with Cortez Masto, who is the woman you just watched, she's a Democratic senator, and she got to do the response to the objection. It was a very weak response, to be quite honest with you. Chuck Schumer came out, introduced Martin Heinrich. That's both are Democratic senators, Chuck Schumer and Martin Heinrich. The Republicans objected. Effectively, the bump stock, the bump act, it is dead. It is DOA, gone, finito, won't be there, okay? I mean, again, as we've been saying this whole time, this was a political show vote. That's exactly what we said this morning, what we said yesterday, and what we just saw happen. So when Cortez Masto came up to do the response to the objection, effectively, she was looking for political points to get clips so the media can run with it and then turn the tide of opinion against Republicans because they're evil and they want machine guns. None of that was really spicy. None of that was impassioned. None of that was a good clip. It just, overall, that was very lackluster. And the fact that she was late to her own party by like 10 minutes, which I almost thought they weren't going to respond to anything. But that was the response. That was it. So effectively, you guys just won in the short term. Make sure that you guys are paying attention because we got some more stuff coming tonight you are going to absolutely love. So make sure that subscribe bell is on. You got the likes. You got all the things, notification. Because we are about to continue this path. We've got so much stuff to cover. But effectively, wrapping this live stream, the Bump Act, completely dead. You saw it die in real time. We covered it. We added a little bit. We saw the rebuttals, everything that you just saw. So rest easy, my brothers and sisters, my patriots of this incredible nation, those lovers of the Second Amendment, one and all. And we will see you tonight, probably, let's see, it's 3:55, probably about 4 or 5 hours. We've got a bombshell video coming, so make sure you guys see that one. And to each and every one of you, thank you for showing up on short notice. Let's get it, and I will see you on the next one.